When we have individuals, regardless of whether they come from Canada or comes from elsewhere, when they first enter our practice within the hospital, we look to see what are their skills, what are their past experiences. They could be new graduates from whichever program they came from. They could be people that have worked for several years and have a lot of experience. Either way, we still look at that individual and we try to see what is it that they're bringing with them to the job, what is it that they still need to know to be able to perform the job we need them to do within our organization, and then how do we help them leap that gap between what they are confident in doing and what they're used to doing and what our practices and our best practices. When someone's new entering the workforce with us, we usually mentor them. We link them with their supervisor, usually a clinical practice leader. There are a lot of things internally that we do within the hospital, whether it's in the orientation process, ensuring with them the best practice things that are going on there so they get used to it, this mentorship and buddying with another individual that's in the same job. And then the other thing is we have internal certification processes to bring people up to speed on things that they need to do. So really, it's not a matter of whether you're trained in Canada or you're not trained in Canada, regardless of what your background is. What happens when you enter the workforce with us is we spend that time to get to know you as an individual. We find out what your strengths are, because I'm sure there are many, and then we find out, well, what are the areas that you need support on? And that's where we work with the individual to get them to that point where they're practicing at the level that we need them to. So one thing for employers to take into account when they're working with international graduates and individuals who come from international backgrounds is there will be times when those individuals will struggle, because there are things that we take for granted, being Canadians coming from a shared background, that perhaps those individuals do not have the luxury of bringing with them. And it could be because of a cultural issue, could be because of a language issue, it could be because that individual just hasn't seen the type of practice that we are used to having in our own environment. And when that happens, I think it's really important for employers to think about what is it that we can do to actually provide support for the person. It could be that we need to provide them with a role model by either ourselves performing that job and showing them how it's done, or linking them to another individual, whether another pharmacist or another pharmacy technician, so that they can actually see what is it that another individual would do in that very same scenario. The other thing is we need to think about what are other ways to support them from a feedback perspective. Sometimes what we tend to do is say, you've got the job, we have great confidence in you, go ahead and do the great things that we expect of you. And we forget that people need to hear both what they're doing that's good, so that they can continue to do those things, but also what are the areas they could improve upon. And no matter how good a person is, there will always be areas that they need to improve upon. And I think as an employer or a supervisor, a person who others look for mentorship from, you need to always think about how to give that feedback in a timely way so that the individual is always hearing about what things I really liked about what you did so you can continue, but also, this one thing that you did, it could have been done in this different way. And I think that would have really improved that interaction that I just saw you had with that patient or that doctor or the other pharmacist. So I think feedback is very, very important. And as employers, you need to think about how do we continue on a daily basis to provide feedback and support for the individuals who may sometimes be struggling, not because they're bad individuals, but because perhaps they haven't had the experience in Canada to perform in a way that we take for granted.